Hello, I'm Tom Meeks, and this is 3D Design for Fun and Life, featuring Moment of Inspiration, using the uniquely easy Noun and Verb method.
This session is Palette 3 Verbs, Tab 2 Transform, Row 2. Mirror, Array, Align, and Orient.
The mirror verb. The mirror verb allows us to make mirrored copies or change the orientation of an object. When we click on the mirror verb, the prompt says, Select Objects to Mirror. We'll click on our train and click Done. The prompt says, Pick Start Point. This is going to be the starting point of a dividing line for performing the mirror. We select the point using the left mouse button. The prompt reads, Pick Endpoint. As we move our mouse, we can see that we can mirror in any direction. But we usually use one of the axis lines. Before clicking on the endpoint, note that we have a choice to make. If Delete Input Objects is unchecked, we will end up with two objects facing in different directions. If it is checked, the original object will be deleted, leaving only the new copy. We'll leave it unchecked. Mirror has a memory. If we move the original, the copy is also moved.
Array verb group. There are 4 array verb methods. Each of these verbs multiplies the number of objects and lays them out in some fashion.
Before moving on to the specific array verbs, it's important to point out that naming objects is always recommended in Moment of Inspiration. But it is especially important to remember to name an object that will be arrayed before actually doing so. This way, all of the copies will be able to be selected at one time using the object browser simply by using one name to select.
The grid array verb. The grid array makes copies in different directions. Usually we only use the X and Y, but copies in the Z direction are also possible. We first select an object, and then set the number of copies to be created in each dimension. We'll use 5X and 5Y. We then need to set the spacing. We can do this using the mouse, or by entering values directly. The most precise way to set the spacing is to enter values directly into the X and Y spacing text boxes. But for now, we'll rely on setting these values with our mouse. We'll click on the center of the selected object and drag down to form a rectangle that defines our spacing. Clicking the left mouse button creates the new array. Sometimes we need to be a bit creative in how we use grid array to achieve our goals. In this case, we want to create a honeycomb pattern. Starting with a single hex shape doesn't really work in this case. We need to start with at least 2. Then we need another one just to get our spacing right. We'll select the blue hex polygons. Set the number of X to 10 and the number of Y to 5. Next, we'll draw our distance box from the center of the first hex to the center of the magenta hex. The honeycomb is completed. We can then delete the magenta hex.
The dir or direction array. This verb copies a defined number of objects in a selected direction. We'll replicate this gear 5 times using the direction array. We'll simply use our mouse to choose the direction and spacing.
Array circular. In our experience, this is the most used array verb method in Moment of Inspiration. We'll use our newly created gear array to demonstrate. We'll use the origin as our center point. Is it any wonder that our students have used this verb so often? The possibilities are endless. But there is more to this method than simply replicating in a simple circle. For instance, let's take this object. By changing the item count, we produce different effects. Let's try 16. Now we'll change the angle to fill to 180 and go to the 3D view. We can see the copies, but it isn't so obvious how useful that would be until we change the vertical step value to 2, creating a spiral staircase. If we change our item count to 32 and our radial step to -1, we see the spiral gets wider as it goes up. This would require supports to print correctly, but it is definitely worth knowing that we can do this in moment of inspiration so easily.
The array curve. The array curve makes new copies, aligned along a selected path. We'll click on the Curve button and select the tree light. Next, we select our path. As the copies are made, they align, evenly spaced along the selected path. At this point, we can choose to define an item count or choose a spacing distance. In this instance, the default item count was 10. But if we change the spacing distance to 20, the item count automatically drops to 9. In the case of a string of lights, we probably don't want objects overlapping. But if we wanted to use the same path to create a caterpillar, overlapping the objects would be exactly what we want.
Align verb. We use the Align verb constantly. When we click on the Align verb button, we are asked to select objects to align. We'll choose all of our sample objects. And we see that we can align in 6 different ways. Horizontal center, top, bottom, vertical center, left, and right. We also have one option, Move as Group. When this is checked, multiple items act as a single item. To center this group requires 2 steps. We must use both horizontal and vertical alignment. When aligning text, we always use the Move as Group option. Otherwise, strange alignments can happen. Using the Move as Group can make it difficult to properly bottom align words having letters that drop below the baseline, like lowercase p or q. In this case, we can follow up the Align verb with the Move verb.
The Orient verb group. When we click on the Orient verb group button, it reveals that there are 3 Orient verb methods.
The Orient method. This verb is used to align faces of objects having different planes. When we click on the Orient verb button, the prompt says to select objects to orient. We'll select the cylinder and click on Done. The prompt changes to Pick Base Origin. We'll click on the center of the bottom of the cylinder and press the left mouse button to set the base origin. The prompt changes to Adjust Base Axis Orientation. We'll use the length of our cylinder as the base axis orientation. Look for the axis having the small circle. And it appears to be what we want. Click on Done. The prompt changes to Pick Target Origin. We'll choose one side of the large block as our target. As we move over the target, watch for the hints that the cylinder is on the selected surface and that we have it centered. When centered, click with the left mouse button to set the position. The prompt changes to adjust target axis orientation. It's what we want, so we'll click on Done to complete the operation. It can require a bit of practice to become comfortable using this method, but it does solve some common problems we face when designing.
The line-to-line method. This method is a bit less complicated. The goal is to line up the ends of both curves. We do this by selecting one of the objects and defining the start and end points of our alignment curve using the mouse. Then we define the start and end points of our target curve, again using the mouse. When all points are defined, the verb moves the selected object into place, scaling it as necessary.
The view-to-view method. Here is a split-screen view of a toy. For 3D printing, we need the object to be oriented in the top view, as it currently appears in the front view. It obviously was created in the wrong view for 3D printing. While this happens quite a bit, when students fail to pay attention to their starting view, it's not a huge problem. In fact, it's easily fixed using the view-to-view verb method. We simply select the object, choose the view we would actually like to see in our top view, and then click in the top view. The part is now oriented for 3D printing. When we tell students that your failures are not final, we mean it. 3D design in Moment of Inspiration provides many easy ways to fix errors or oversights in our designs. This concludes the introduction of the verbs found in the second row of Palette 3, Tab 2. The next video in this series will introduce the verbs in the third row of Palette 3, Tab 2, Flow and Twist. That our failures are not final is proven time and time again in Moment of Inspiration and 3D printing. As we begin to realize that what might be called failures, big or small, are simply opportunities for improvement, evaluate, redesign, and print again until our designs are exactly what we want.